The Nintendo Switch has established itself as quite the powerhouse for retro and retro-style games this generation. Aside from having exclusive content series like the Sega Ages line, it also has been doing a great job bringing indie games into a fully portable format, something that has continued to endear the system to me. As an older gamer with a family and other life responsibilities, I may not have paid these smaller games much attention due to my limited time. Portability changes the dynamics of these experiences in a big way, allowing me to take them anywhere and play them anytime I have the motivation to do it. We are going to be looking at more games I have discovered on the Nintendo Switch that I think you might like as well. '99 Vidas was released on the Switch in November of 2018 after successful runs on pretty much all the other major console and computer platforms. It's a side-scrolling beat-em-up that takes heavy inspiration from Streets of Rage. You have multiple characters to choose from and even more you can unlock later. Each of these characters have different powers, speed, and elemental attacks that make them unique, and it supports up to 4-player co-op and competitive multiplayer. I was immediately drawn to this one thanks to its colorful graphics and decent music. The combo system is easy to understand, and playing with and against your friends is crazy fun. The more you play, the more you gain the ability to upgrade your characters, unlocking even more moves and special attacks. The story didn't do much for me, but in games like this it's all about the fun factor of the gameplay. In this regard, it's got all your bases covered and the nice presentation is just icing on the cake. The original Doom hit the Switch recently, and I must say I have been enjoying it quite a bit on the go. You've likely played this one 1,000 times already, so you know exactly what to expect. For what it's worth, the Switch port is buttery smooth and looks great on a small screen. The dual analog control here took me a bit to adjust to, but does add some really nice accuracy over the older console ports of Doom that use just the D-pad or one analog stick. Doom and Doom 2 are available as separate purchases, and both feature local and online multiplayer. In 2019, you can pretty much play Doom on anything and everything, including the multitude of PC mods that have been created over the years. Even so, having Doom portable like this still provides a nice nuance to the experience. I haven't really had access to it this way before, so firing it up in the doctor's office or on a road trip is a nice change of pace. Loadrunner has seen many games across many platforms over the years, but Loadrunner Legacy here is one of my favorites. Many of you know this gameplay well. Grab the gold and get to the exit, it's that simple, except when it's not. You can easily trap yourself, making a level unwinnable. This is especially true in the puzzle mode, where the entire setup is designed to outsmart you. Lots of different levels and puzzles await you, and the new 3D coat of paint is a nice touch. If you didn't like the series before, this isn't going to change that, but for fans of easygoing, self-paced puzzle experiences, this one is a great one for the Switch. Sega Ages Space Harrier was released on the Nintendo Switch in Japan recently, and it's another stunner from M2. Pixel-perfect graphics and super smooth gameplay are here as expected, as well as a few more additions, such as an easy mode with shields to help against environmental dangers, and a ton of visual options such as widescreen and scanline presentations. This actually being on the small screen adds quite a bit of challenge. My eyes aren't what they used to be, and some of the later levels are so fast I had trouble keeping up. Luckily, it looks just as good on your HD TV as it does on the small screen, and it's just about as arcade perfect as you can get. My Saturn gave me an excellent port of this over 20 years ago, but the extra options and the portability definitely made it worth picking up. If you are a fan of this game at all, Be sure to add it to your collection when it hits the West soon. I will say this, Sega needs to start bringing out games in the Sega Ages line that haven't been available elsewhere multiple times. As much as I like Space Harrier, I have had the ability to play it numerous times elsewhere. Straight the hell up, Sega. It's time for you to move the Sega Ages line into the System 32, Model 2, Model 3, and Saturn era of games. We appreciate the effort so far, but if the series is gonna grow and be more profitable for you, we need access to games we have never had access to before. Mighty Gunvolt Burst is a Mega Man clone of the highest quality. It nails the look, feel, presentation, and gameplay of the Capcom Classic series so closely you could almost swear Capcom themselves made it. And boy is that a good thing if you love this type of stuff. It even has a load of customizations you can fool around with to make your character play exactly how you want him. Everything from bigger bullets, slower attacks, and even the trajectory of fire. It really does allow you to sort of make things how you want. The visuals and sound have that retro upgraded NES look and feel about them, and the animation is superb. It even retains much of the challenge of the Mega Man games, something that should be a delight to those that revel in having their asses kicked. Overall, it's an homage that really nails what it set out to do. It's classic enough to draw in the fans of Mega Man, and new enough to make them appreciate the content. Strikey Sisters caught me completely off guard. I had no clue what it was and hadn't even heard of it when I watched the trailer. It's a puzzle game akin to other brick breakers like Breakout, now with a magical spin of special attacks, boss battles, and enemies to contend with. You must keep the ball in the playfield, keep enemies and their attacks off of you, and destroy the blocks to move on. The two-player mode is even better, giving both you and a friend your own areas of the playfield to worry about. It's a nice twist on the genre of game that's as old as the hills, and fans of puzzle games should really love the hell out of it. The presentation is simple, making the gameplay here the entire focus. That's okay too, because what's here is strong enough to carry both the single and multiplayer experience quite well.
Magic ball. Iron ball.
Bot Vice was another one out of left field that shocked me pretty good. Remember games like Nam 1975 on the Neo Geo that had you fighting on one side of the screen and the enemies attacking from the other? Well, that's pretty much Bot Vice in a nutshell. The playfield is divided by a barrier that you can take cover behind as you attack. Enemies can rush this barrier and attack up close, or lob grenades at you to get you moving. Your attacks are typically straight ahead unless you lock on to enemies manually, making the gameplay difficult to come to terms with. Once you do start to get the feel of things, this challenging shooter sort of transcends the genre and becomes its own thing. I can't say I've played too much like it before. It's incredibly hectic and it absolutely wrecked me the first dozen or so times I played it. There is so much going on and so much gameplay to figure out in such a simple concept, you can't help but to admire the hell out of it. This is for fans that love hard games that really challenge you. Combined with its unique feel, this is definitely one you should consider if you like shoot-'em-ups. Contra Anniversary Collection is a compilation of classic games from the series across multiple platforms. M2 does the honors here, and they once again nail the graphics and sound of every one of these games. First up is the arcade version of Contra, with its narrow view and weird jumping mechanics. This is where Contra started for me, and I vividly remember trying to play it as a kid. I sucked at it then just as I suck at it now, but I'm really glad they included it. Next up is the arcade version of Super Contra, the direct sequel to the arcade original. This again uses the funky narrow view, but does add some improved visuals and boss fights to spruce things up. I again never got the feel for this game and never got any good at it, but I still love seeing it here. It's a great reminder of while arcade games are almost always technically superior, they didn't always play better. We also get the NES port of Contra, which is about as classic as games can get. Me and my friends played this so many times I couldn't even get close to an accurate guess. Sometimes we sat back and enjoyed the game with 50 men, sometimes we took on the challenge of defeating the alien menace without them. The two-player mode provides near endless fun, and remains one of the most powerful memories from that era of games for me. We also get the Famicom version of this game, which was a little different from what the NES edition gave us. There are cinemas, a map screen showing your progress, and more animation in the Japanese release. It's a nice touch to show you the complete game that many of us missed out on back in the late 80s. Super C is here, of course, the NES port of the arcade game Super Contra. This gives us more of what the first game was about, though I must confess I did not enjoy the overhead stages at all. They really knocked this one down a few notches among these releases, and I never understood why Konami kept including them in later games. Much to my delight, Contra 3 The Alien Wars from the Super Nintendo made its way into this collection, and it's one of my favorite games of the series. Mode 7 effects, awesome two-player mode, gorgeous graphics and sound, it's nearly the complete package of perfect run-and-gun action. The only thing that holds this back from being my favorite in the series are the awful overhead stages. Believe it or not, the black and white OG Game Boy got a Contra game called Operation C, and it's completely awesome. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's as good as any of the console Contras I've listed here. The only drawback is that it lacks the staple co-op multiplayer of those games. But even so, this is a damn fine run and gun here. It even sounds great, as so many Game Boy games tended to do. And of course we get the best Contra game ever made, Contra Hard Corps. This Sega Genesis original took the Contra concept and cranked up everything. No gimmicky overhead stages here, just beautifully animated sprites and backgrounds giving you the very best Konami had to offer. You also get different characters to choose from, and a few gameplay additions that really make this one stand out. It doesn't sound as good as the Super Nintendo Contra, especially the sound effects, but this one is #1 everywhere else for me. We also get both PAL versions of the 16-bit Contra releases for the Super Nintendo and Mega Drive, complete with 50 and 60 Hz options for those that care about such things. PAL versions went under the Probotector line, where robots did all of the fighting. Also included is a bonus book of information, interviews, and other tidbits about each game. There's quite a bit included in here that I've never seen before. Konami also added the Japanese versions of these games in a separate category. Many of these often have little changes and nuances from their Western variants that can make a pretty big difference. The Genesis Contra, for instance, has hit points instead of insta-deaths. Overall, this is an incredible value for what's included. These games separately would have cost you an arm and a leg, but combined here they are a pittance for the amount of gameplay you get. Of course, being portable helps immensely to its appeal. In the out of left field category comes Blazing Chrome, a Contra-inspired run-and gun that does its source inspiration proud. This feels like a combination of the 16-bit Contra 3 and Contra Hard Corps, both in gameplay and graphics and sound. Hell, a few changes and you could call this Contra Hard Corps 2. All the staples from those games return. Large bosses, two-player co-op, and some very nice graphical effects are all here. It also has a number of great weapons to fight with, and you can choose which stages you want to play first and in what order. I've only had this one a few days, and the challenge is pretty solid. I love the mad use of parallax here because it isn't just a great effect, but it adds a ton of personality and depth to each and every set piece. If Contra Anniversary Collection doesn't appeal because it's a collection of games you've already played, you may find this what you're looking for. The legacy of racing games in the arcade is long and storied. You have greats from Sega, the hits from Midway, and countless other gems from many other game makers. Horizon Chase Turbo sets out to combine all into one great throwback for speed-loving fans of those old games. The biggest inspiration has to be the Outrun and Cruisin' USA series of games. It has the look and feel of a sort of hybrid of those two, including the various locations in which they took place. Here you get a campaign mode that sets you out on a quest of races that takes you clear across the globe. You visit California, Chile, Brazil, South Africa, India, Japan, and a bunch of other places. The goal is to win races, open up access to new cars, and unlock upgrades like speed, steering, and acceleration. The amount of variety in the visuals is unreal, kinda taking every racing game location from the 80s and 90s and giving them some form of representation. You'll get great set pieces from each region, weather effects, day and night cycles, and even varying terrain changes. The most important part of any arcade racer is its gameplay, and this one nails the ultra smooth speed of Sega's best. Fast doesn't quite do the gameplay justice here. It's freaking explosive. I mean, you whip around turns at blinding speeds and the game never lets up. This is less about the brakes and more about your position on the track when taking turns. This means the speed never lets up throughout the entire race, as it should be in a great arcade racer of this design. I can't recommend this enough for fans of racing games where this is the case. If you like fast and fun, you'll have a hard time beating this. The up to 4-player competitive mode makes it all even better. Mother Russia Bleeds is a late entry to my video here because I quite literally just discovered it. This game isn't new, it's been out on other platforms for years, but I never paid it any mind because of the name. Surely it's some adventure game about the fall of communism, right? Well, this is a case where taking a minute and paying attention to the trailers of a game would have been a great help, because Mother Russia Bleeds is actually a side-scrolling beat-em-up of the most brutal nature you've ever seen. The story centers around a group of gypsies being kidnapped and experimented on, and their attempt at escape and revenge. The play mechanics are vicious in this game. You just aren't beating the hell out of these guys, you are smashing their brains out, stabbing them, blowing their heads off, and all other manner of graphic death you can think of. You can even use a shit jacket to beat your foes to death. And that's the entire draw to this game, its brutality. Your eyes aren't going to be babied here, and you'll see plenty of moves and weapons that draw blood and guts at every turn. I also quite enjoy the story behind the scenes, which is an experimental drug turning people into monsters. There is a gameplay mechanic that involves stealing this drug from your fallen foes, and using it to heal yourself. The only thing that frustrates me about this experience is the constantly wandering enemies that sometimes go off the screen. You can't hit them there, and even the weapons they drop will fall out of reach. It's a design choice I've never understood, as it breaks the flow of action every damn time. Other than that though, this is a red knuckle experience with great visuals and a fun backstory. It also happens to be 4-player co-op for your enjoyment. For you Road Rash fans wishing that Electronic Arts would make a new game in the series comes Road Redemption, a 2017 release that was done by some of the same people involved in Electronic Arts' awesome motorcycle combat racer. It captures many of the elements of Road Rash when it comes to combat and feel, while adding a bunch of new elements all on its own. The upgrade system allows you to carry your progress race to race and get stronger, while the campaign mode has tons of missions to complete. The visuals here are awesome, and I love the fact that it has such a great feeling of verticality to the maps. It really does feel like you are going up and down hills, and the sense of speed is top notch. The aforementioned combat is vicious on a level far above what you knew with Road Rash, now being able to kill your opponents with swords, dynamite, grenade launchers, and many more weapons. The atmosphere feels quite different from the quaint countryside tracks and street racing in Road Rash. You are now in a world of pure insanity with gang wars running rampant. I like this though, as it doesn't copy Road Rash so closely to be nauseating. It tries to be its own game, and aside from some crappy little glitches like getting stuck on roadside items, it succeeds strongly. It won't replace your need for a new Road Rash experience, but it might just make the wait a little easier. The Nintendo Switch continues to be a great source of these kinds of games for me. The portable aspect is icing on the cake of an already great library of releases. Even if you do not own or plan to own a Switch, most of these games can be gotten on other platforms. Whether you game on a PC, a PS4, or an Xbox One, most of these should be available to you. I also noticed that many of these games on the Switch include a demo version, allowing you to try it out before you buy it. I recommend this whenever possible. Whether you are looking for something challenging, something to play with your family or friends, or just something to take with you on vacation, you should find something here to help you out. I'm Sega Lord X, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.